It's always that fine balance, right? Of, wanting to be who you are and then wanting to fit in.
Are you ready? All right, let's go.
Manufacturing is sexy. Sounds crazy? Just wait. I'm Z Holly, host of The Art of Manufacturing. Your behind-the-scenes look at how people who make stuff are trying to make it in their industries. If you've ever wondered how to build a brand, a business, or just a better mousetrap, tune in and enjoy. I've received a bunch of messages this week that just kind of blew me away, and I want to share with you all. I started this podcast to try to shine a light on manufacturing, how exciting it is and how creative it is, and also to inspire people to become entrepreneurs. But to be honest, I really didn't expect to get messages like I did this week. So if you'll indulge me, I'll read a couple of them. First of all, we have a fan in Hong Kong named Monica Park, and she came to our event last week. And after the event, she wrote to me and she said, "Thanks so much for all of your quality work. Finding the podcast was a game changer for me. It's changing the trajectory of my career and life for the better. I'm so inspired." And I also want to give a shout out to Alex, who's starting a new company, or at least he's thinking about it. And I got this message for him this week. "Thanks so much for all you do for the LA Tech community. It's so cheesy, but honestly, I'm not sure I'd even be trying to launch something today if I hadn't stumbled on your podcast way back when." So my friends, I love it when you talk cheesy to me. It means so much. And we work so hard on this podcast every week with our heads down. And a lot of times we might think, is it worth it? But then we hear from you. And I think about if this podcast can inspire even a few people, man, it's so worth it. So thank you. And along those lines, last week we had Bethany Shorb, who studied to be an artist, but she never expected to be an entrepreneur, never expected to be a manufacturer. Well, this week we have a similar story that's a bit of a surprise for her. Litty Mathew, she met her husband, future husband-to-be, Melkon, in graduate school. But then she started Greenbar Distillery, which was the first distillery in at least 100 years in LA. So I was curious to ask her and to find out what it takes to balance that kind of tension between having a point of view while building the largest organic spirits company in the world. And we discover how the founders' multicultural backgrounds influenced what they do. And we talk about how spirits are made and also the challenges of using all natural ingredients. And I also get a taste of their products newly launched in their new branding just launched this week. We hear about that and a whole lot more on this week's episode of The Art of Manufacturing.
Have I ever told you the story about how the distillery started? When my husband, the other partner, Melkon Khosrovian, and I first got engaged, his side of the family from the former Soviet Union, actually Armenia, they would throw these lavish parties. And at these parties, the table would be groaning with all sorts of delicious dishes, great food. But there was also bottles of alcohol. And so these were usually Eastern European vodkas or high-proof fruit brandies, the stuff it's all clear. Oh, man, you take a sip of that stuff and you won't forget. So for me, it was like having jet fuel cut with nail polish remover. It had all the charm of that combination. When someone says a nice elaborate toast to you, you should drink. That's the acceptable norm. And I would be like, oh, I hate this stuff. And I would put it down. And so he was on this quest, if you will, to make something that I would like. So he would follow me to the Hollywood Farmers Market, and I noticed he was buying things, mostly very aromatic things, vegetables, fruits, herbs, and flowers, that kind of thing. And then he would raid the spice pantry, and he'd find some interesting dry spices, put it in there. Okay, I got to tell you, some of it was really bad. But the good ones, he would decant through coffee filters, and then he would make a pretty label and put it on the bottle, and we'd go back to various family occasions, events. When that time came for the toast, he would reach over and he would pour me some of this stuff, and I would drink it. And the cousins noticed. They said, wow, you got her to drink something. Way to go, man. And they would swipe the bottles and, take it home with them and share it with their friends. And those friends would call us up and ask for their very own stash. And so it just got to this point, it was out of control, and we were getting calls from people we didn't know. And at that point, we thought, okay, well, we should probably get our phone number unlisted, or maybe we go into business. And that was, oh my gosh, that was probably 13 years ago now, maybe close to 14. So
Did you make the right choice?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Everything still puts a smile on my face. So that's really how we started. And, without having that desire to do something, it's not worth it. It's just so fatiguing, as other entrepreneurs, I'm sure, will say. If you don't love it, it's really, really difficult. But, the whole idea of Greenbar was really founded on love. It's always colored everything we've done in that it's a love for each other, but it's the love of the craft and the love of ingredients and, love of adventure and finding new flavors, telling stories through what we do. So,
did you ever think that you were going to be a manufacturing entrepreneur?
Not in a million years would I have ever thought that's what I would have done. My family is from India, South India, and education has always been very important. Like, you go to school, you better become, something that you can have a good living and take care of your family. And so what is interesting for me in my personal journey is that for a long time, I was told I couldn't do something like this. My parents would be like, nope, that's not something you can do. And it's not that they meant it in any bad way. They were just terrified for me in that I would fail and that I couldn't take care of myself or my family. So that's where it was coming. It was coming from a place of love. It wasn't like anything else. And so I believed it. And it wasn't until I met Melkon, who in many ways is a catalyst. And I think I'm a catalyst for him as well in some way. It wasn't until I met him and he was like, I can do that. No, you can do that. No, let's try to do that. So we got to try. And, and in the beginning, I remember saying, no, we can't. No, I can't do that. And, it was really him like, why not? Why not? And it's that question that I now ask myself in difficult situations. Like I will ask myself, why not me? And, like any difficult moment, if I ask myself that question, why not me? Why can't I be the one to do X, Y, or Z? That's actually really helpful. It's powerful.
That's a really profound thought, too. Because so often we see other people successful and we separate ourselves from that.
Right. Why not me?
Yeah. You were in school when you met him? How did it happen?
Graduate school at USC. We met on the first day of journalism school. I remember standing there waiting for the classroom to open. We were just kind of milling about. And I noticed this handsome man in a blazer. He was wearing a blazer. He had jeans on, but he looked fancier than everyone else. He had a cup of coffee in his hand. And as he was approaching the door, he looked at me and then he dropped his coffee. And I don't think it had to do with me, by the way. He just dropped his coffee. And I was the first one to help him. And so we kind of, our eyes met over wadded tissue or
I could totally
paper
see
towels.
That. Just as you both reached for the paper towels at the same time your eyes met.
Exactly.
You were first in LA, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
That's right.
Since Prohibition, what's the story behind that? Doesn't mean that you started in 1950. You just started recently, right?
Well, okay, not me personally. I'm much younger than you think I am. Yeah, so the distillery, it was the first distillery in the city of Los Angeles since Prohibition. So about 85 years, 80, 90 years. But actually, we can't find a record of a distillery for more than that, more than 100 years. And there are many reasons why that is. One, we don't have a lot of the feeder industries that distilleries thrive in. And usually that would be like winemaking, beer making, other types of that kind of manufacturing. So therefore, it's very difficult for us to get things like glass and ingredients and, all those kind of things. And your government agencies aren't used to a company like a distillery. It makes it extremely difficult because they don't know how to regulate you. So that was definitely a challenge. The health department in LA County, they would regulate us as if we were shelling shrimp or processing milk or. And now we've gotten to the point where the LA County Health Department no longer regulates us.
Really?
Mm-hmm, that's right.
Why would that be?
Well, for years we had been telling them that the state also regulates us, and their requirements were often different. So it just made no sense. And LA County Health Department understood this, and they tried very hard, but they are just trying to uphold the law and regulation. So, it's not like we can get upset at them. They're just trying to do their job as well. And so over the years, they really kept an open mind, and we always thought about regulations. We would always tell our regulators, can we follow the spirit of the regulation?
No pun intended.
Yeah, really. Oh, I didn't even know that was funny. And if we could, then we would come to some agreement that, hey, okay, this is okay, And because especially when it came to equipment, our equipment is so different. It doesn't have the same sort of certifications that regular food making equipment would have. So it was all challenges. But in the end, they helped to lobby also not to regulate us. So we appreciated that.
Yeah, win-win.
Yeah.
What year did you start the company?
2004 in Monrovia, California.
And then you moved to LA?
Yes, we moved to downtown Los Angeles in 2012. And it was an aide of the former mayor, Villaraigosa, who paved the way for us to come to downtown LA because we were such an interesting business. We had all these green initiatives, and they thought that we would make a good addition to the city. So there were some, at that time, the CRA was still around, the Community Redevelopment Agency. And we were able to get a grant from them. We're in an empowerment zone. So that's very helpful. All of those were great. And we didn't realize when we moved to the arts district in downtown Los Angeles that it would just become this amazing area of growth.
You really got in early.
We got in early.
There's a lot going on.
It's
the hot place to be now.
It really is. And, thank God we got there before the craziness started, because for manufacturing, obviously we have to have a certain cost to be able to, to actually stay there and manufacture products. So we got there way before the rush.
So how did you get into that real estate market? Are you still renting, or do you own? Or
no, we own the building.
Amazing.
And the only way we were actually looking to lease the building next door. Well, as we were walking to our car, we noticed this building. It was under construction. It was our real estate agent. He looked at the building and says, wait a minute, you guys could own this. And we looked at him and said, but it's missing a wall. It was actually a building that had been compromised in the fire next door. And therefore, they were just trying to construct the wall back up. And actually, that was the way we could afford it.
A literal fire sale.
It was a fire sale, yeah. And thank goodness, because we were able to configure the space, and that was good for our manufacturing, all of these things, and it was less than what it would have cost to lease.
Oh my God. So lucky.
Yes.
I have to ask you about the equipment and all that. You're talking about the equipment being unique. So tell me about what is the process of distillation?
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna ask you to remember your high school science. Well, if you've been to a winery or a brewery, that's how we start. We have to start by making wine or beer first, and then we distill it and make spirits. So the first thing that has to happen is fermentation. We have to ferment something with sugar in it in order for it to turn to alcohol. For example, this week we were making our Crusoe organic rum. And how we start with was we make it out of blackstrap molasses, organic blackstrap molasses. So the blackstrap molasses, we put it in a tank with water and some very special yeasts that we think give a great flavor profile to the rum. And then we have this closed-top system, which is great for us because we can control the temperature. When we control temperature, like many beer and wine makers, what's great about it is that it slows the yeast down, and therefore we get more complex flavors over time. So it's really, really nice to do it that way for us. So instead of the fermentation being complete in maybe 2 to 3 days or even less, it actually takes about 7 to 10 days for us. And at the end of that period of time, we will get about 10 to 12% of alcohol in that mix. So for beer and wine makers, that's cool. That's kind of where they stop, and then they finish through finishing processes. But what we're trying to do is concentrate the alcohol. That's what happens in distillation. So how we do that is actually by separating the water from the alcohol by boiling point. So that's really the goal of distillation. So we'll put it in a still, and then we have this, we're one of the first ones to have a small scale continuous fractionating column still. All those words mean something. Small scale in that it's not a refinery, like it actually fits on the floor of our distillery. It is fractionating, which is important. And what that means is that, you know how I was saying how alcohol and water we separated by boiling point? Each boiling point, when it comes to when it comes time for the alcohol to come out, has a unique flavor. So over time, we've figured out what flavors we like in that Crusoe rum that we make, and therefore we're able to pinpoint it by temperature.
And so it's not just that the alcohol is at the lower temperature, one temperature, and the water is at another one.
No, they have fractions in between, the fractionating. Yeah, exactly. So that's really what we're trying to do, is that not only are we trying to separate alcohol and water, so that we just get the alcohol out, we're also trying to separate bad flavors from good flavors. And that is revolutionary, because small companies like us have never had that luxury of having equipment that is just so precise.
So is this new? Where did you get this equipment?
It was a fellow craft distiller up in Montana who actually made the prototype. And he came from a different industry, petrochemicals, making refineries, basically. And he was like, what? This is how you guys operate? This is so backwards. It's true. Technology hasn't changed very much in distilling, at least at our scale, in a very, very long time. So he came in and brought in some of that expertise from that industry and created this miniature version. It's still pretty big and tall, but it is different. It does not look like the cute pot still that when we think of craft distilling. It doesn't look like that. It's long columns.
We can include pictures of that in our show notes.
Sure, why not?
Okay, great. Okay, before we break, I have a favor to ask of you. Yes, you. I'm trying to get 24 more iTunes reviews in the next week. Will you help? It only takes 3 super easy steps. If you don't know how, go to makeitinla.org/iTunes for a play-by-play. Thank you so much. It means a lot. You're listening to The Art of Manufacturing. Join the conversation on social at We Make It in LA and our Facebook group, makeitinla.org/community. We'll be right back after this break. I want to give a shout out to Happily, a nationwide network of the best freelance event producers, coordinators, and assistants. They can take on the biggest or smallest of projects. They're a sponsor of the Make It monthly talks, and I've personally worked with the team on everything from high-level strategy to nitty-gritty on-site logistics, and they're great. If your company is looking for long-term or last-minute support on events, go to makeitinla.org/happily, and you'll get a 30% discount on your first 6 months of membership in 2017. We're speaking with Litty Mathew, the co-founder of Greenbar Distillery. She and her husband, Melkon, are embracing their experiences as immigrants to find the sweet spot between being unique and fitting in to what the market wants. I see these bottles sitting here and they're tempting me. Can I have a taste of some of these
we did bring bottles. So as you know, Greenbar Distillery, everything we make is made from organic ingredients. I wanted to mention why we use organics, because this is interesting. We changed to organic in 2008. We'd been a distillery for about 4 years. And if you remember what happened in 2008, it was a crazy year, right? Many businesses went out, right? Went out of business, basically. And for us, it was the moment for us to figure out who we were all about. Really focus and come to the heart of Greenbar. And actually, at that point is when we kind of came into organic. And this is a funny story. We'd been making a celery peppercorn vodka under our old label. And one batch was really pungent. We thought, wow, this is really strong. We use the same sort of, proportions. And so we called up the grower and asked him, hey, what's going on with your super celery? It's really strong and very, very savory. And, it's got a lot of oomph to it. And so he's like, I think it's the same stuff. So he looks at the lot codes and things like that and goes, oh, my gosh. That box of celery I gave you is from the organic side of one of our farms. We're slowly converting our farms over. And so we thought, wow, this is really interesting. I wonder if there's anything to it. So we called up some of our friends over at UC Davis and asked, do organics give you more flavor? And at that point, they were like, yeah, we think so. We see it anecdotally that organic produce has more flavor. The reason being that they have to grow deeper roots. And they have to grow thicker skin when you don't have synthetic pesticides and fertilizers to bolster you along. So you got to fend for yourself if you're a plant. that's good for us, especially like thicker skin. When we think of citrus, for example, that's a lot of great oils. It's great for keeping away bugs and great for flavor. So we were like, oh, this is really interesting. So it was from a flavor perspective that we became an organic company in 2008. So enough about that. Let me show you the products. Okay, so I brought a couple things from the distillery. We do make the largest portfolio of organic spirits, everything from vodkas to rums to liqueurs and whiskeys. You name it, we make it.
Largest in LA? Or largest
largest in the world.
Amazing.
Yeah, right here in LA.
So funny.
And the story is why we do it is because actually our restaurant clients asked for it. They wanted to have all organic drinks or several different options. And every time they'd be like, I just wish someone would make an organic whiskey. Or
She's turning the label around. I want you to all know this is 10:30 in the morning and I get to drink alcohol.
Yeah, there you go. I should have brought some cups. We have to chug from the...
Well, we have the...
there is something in there.
The little kit that you brought me so we can use this.
Okay. So I brought two things. One is the rum that I was talking about. There you go. That will work.
This will work. Are you going to drink any?
Oh, hey. I already come pre-lubricated.
We got this pint glass if you want. A little bit bigger.
It's all good. Okay, you'll see something interesting in front of you, right?
Okay, I see two rum. Well,
so here's what you see. I know I will.
2 vodkas and 2 rums?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will decode why there's 2 vodkas and 2 rums.
Yeah.
One is what people know of as our product. So this is a true organic straight vodka. Mm-hmm. What's next to it,
I see it
is the culmination of everything that we've been doing. And that is really, again, paring down to what is at the heart of our business. And with that, we have repackaged.
No pun intended. You're just filled with these puns. It's all about the love. I see the heart.
Yeah. So the packaging has changed.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, it is really exciting. So that's why you'll see the Crusoe rum, which is in a different bottle shape from the straight, is now going into the same bottle across the board. So it's the same bottle shape. It's got the Greenbar Distillery embossing on the bottom just to help people. It's got the symbol, the heart symbol, which is, again, at the heart of everything that we do, as we say. There's a reason why we did this. When we first started making all these products, it was for different people, different brand owners. And therefore, and this was 2008, right? So around 2008, 2009, we're switching over to organic, and we realized, wow, clients are asking for organic products. Maybe we can just round up other manufacturers and we can go under a marketing umbrella. In the beginning, people thought that idea was good, and they joined tentatively, but pretty soon they dropped out for a number of reasons, including the bad economy. So we were left with all these various brands that we still kept because they were already in distribution. Our distributors were asking, "Hey, you guys going to sell this? You better get over here and sell this." So we were kind of like, "Oh, okay, we'll have to keep all these various brands." But what happened was that our fans, who loved True, for example, didn't know we made the Crusoe rum. So all of a sudden, we were having a problem connecting our fans to the entire line of product.
And
So
you have a lot of different
we have a
products.
lot of products, right? And so we did some small attempts, like you'll see a little tag, like almost like a clothing tag that says Greenbar Distillery. There's a still symbol on the neck. But those just were not enough. It would just, you would miss those completely unless you were looking for it. So by really honing in on one symbol that reflects the entire Greenbar Distillery and putting everything under the Greenbar Distillery label or logo, that's where we think we can help our clients and fans.
Cool. And I'd like to ask you in a moment about that process of rebranding. But I want to have a little taste first.
So I brought this straight just so you can see that it's a very pure product. This is made from wheat that comes from the Midwest.
Bottoms up.
Yeah, enjoy. It's it's supposed to be odorless and clear and all of that.
Actually, I have to be honest, I'm not a fan of vodka. But this is actually really good. I like it.
I gave her the stuff she didn't like.
No. I mean, I don't normally, because it tastes medicinal to me usually. This has a really nice, smooth flavor.
Yeah.
I could actually even imagine just drinking it straight.
Yeah, it's made from great ingredients. There's not much you need to do to it. I should have brought you a Bloody Mary being 10 o'clock in the morning.
I had one yesterday, actually.
Okay, so this is our spice, the Crusoe Organic Spiced Rum. Okay, so here's the issue with spiced rum, why we decided to make a spiced rum. Spiced rum reminds most people of college, and not in a good way. I wanted to make a spiced rum that actually had spices in it. So we have got the, vanilla, cinnamon, it's got cloves, it's got allspice, some fresh orange zest, and this flower, a dried flower called osmanthus. Oh. And what I love about osmanthus is that it has this brightness without having acidity. So it's just like it really pulls it together. One great thing about our stuff is we always list our ingredients. So spirits companies usually don't do that. They don't have to. But we like people to know what they're consuming.
Shall
Cheers.
It smells really good.
It's great in cocktails. Wonderful in cooking. I love to make pound cake. And then soak the bread in the pound cake and the spiced rum. And then eat it all by myself.
What's the proof of that?
This is 35% alcohol. And the reason on our flavored spirits, it's always 35 instead of 40 is usually what the norm is for high-proof spirits. We like it at 35 because then you can taste the ingredients as opposed to like alcohol.
Yeah.
And then we also make a line of liqueurs. Those are 20% alcohol. And the reason we do that is because when you're making a cocktail, you don't get a overtly boozy cocktail. It's actually bringing the proof down. So that's the whole idea.
If this weren't 10:30 in the morning, I'd have more. Is it hard to control the quality, though, if you're not using, because you're using all natural ingredients. You started natural, right?
Yeah.
Then you went organic. But there's a difference. It's not just that you use organic, but is it unique that you even use natural ingredients?
It is, although small craft makers are more open to using real ingredients. Big companies, it's very difficult for them to do that. In fact, when we first started, and we had a most interesting occurrence. I believe it was our lemon vodka, True Lemon Vodka. It had gotten a write-up somewhere or something like that. And so it was, got some attention, basically. And we got a call from a vendor. And this vendor sold fragrances and flavors. And so he called and said, hey, so where do you get your lemon flavor? And, we were perplexed by that question. Like, lemons? And so he goes, oh, you can't do that for very long. There's no way you can scale by using real lemons. That's crazy talk. And he said, you will never be consistent. There are all sorts of issues with stability. It's just crazy what you're doing. So we thought, wow, maybe he's right. We've only been in business for a very short time. Okay, send us your lemon sample, we told him. So he sends us the sample, it comes in the mail, it's clear. Like, oh, that's weird. It doesn't look like lemon anything. And, we mix it in with the alcohol according to the instructions. So it is like you stir it in. And then we tasted it, and I swear to God, it tasted like lemon pledge. And that's, it's synthetics always have just those two top note flavors, and they are, often using the same things in lemon pledge and a lemon, soda or whatever. So we thought, oh, this is not for us. But he was right. There are lots of problems in terms of stability and, being able to scale up and, make things in a meaningful way and keeping flavor consistent, right? So the first thing was stability. Not all real ingredients can be used as flavoring ingredients. So we don't use many things. So some of the things that don't work are like pineapple, watermelon, any sort of chili peppers. All of those will, over time, or very quickly degrade, and the compounds will split up and they taste weird. Okay, so those are great for home infusion, stuff that you should do at home and just serve fresh. Those are great. We never use those things in our production. So that's how we address that. The second was the ability to scale. Yeah, you know what? It does suck to hand peel 2,000 lemons per batch, but that's how we still do it. Because we really want to have that flavor of lemon. We want to do it in a way where we're actually looking at each piece of fruit, like using the right stuff. So we only actually use the skins of these lemons. The lemons, the naked lemons as we call it, go to area bars and restaurants and they juice it for your cocktail.
Oh, nice.
And he was right about consistency also. Fresh ingredients from season to season vary. They actually vary in the farm from one spot to another just because of sunlight. So what we do is we taste everything in production, from fermentation to distillation to flavored items that are being infused every other day. And we like to say it's the secret to a happy marriage.
So is that what the meaning is of a craft distillery? You hear that a lot. You hear the word craft.
And
used
what
a
does it
lot.
mean,
Yeah,
right?
What does it mean?
The way we look at being a craft distillery, at the essence, like the very heart of it,
There we go.
is having a point of view. So the maker has a point of view that he or she wants to share. So, whereas you can't do that in a big company. It's not really about point of view. You're trying to figure out what people will want and then produce that item for them. And so for us, we started out as fans, as cocktail lovers. So we start at the bar. We're trying to figure out how to make a better cocktail. And so from that perspective, we work our way backward to actually making the spirit.
So how does that translate as you're scaling your company? Can you tell us a little bit about how you've grown, and then if that has had to change a little bit? Because it's harder to deal with having a point of view and also to be peeling now probably 4,000 lemons not too
Oh,
far
you know
from now.
what is weird? It's actually easier to make a bigger batch than a smaller batch because there's more room to fix anything that's weird. There's a little bit more leeway when we were making our small batches. And by the way, we started with, after the mason jars, so like 5-gallon jugs. And so we were really, really tiny, and then moved our way up to 50-gallon drums, etc. In that way, having the larger batch is much easier. The thing is that each batch is not going to be the same as the previous because it is a natural product. However, most people will not notice. I'm going to say it's about 95% the same as the previous batch. That's what we're really aiming for. A couple of points, percentage, it's going to be, nature and what she may do. And I know 2%, we're always trying to improve or find new ways to make it even a better batch the next time.
Seems like distillation and being a spirit company is more accessible than ever. So there's a lot more now, right? I mean, there was only one
Yeah.
in LA.
Yeah. Well, there was only one in LA for a long time. So what's interesting is when we started, we were, I think we were small, dinky distillery number 38. There wasn't even a term called craft or anything.
In the country?
In the country.
Really? Wow.
And now there are more than 1,000 of such distilleries. So we are long in the tooth, as they say. I did not have gray hair when I started, and now I do. It's just artfully covered. It's come a long way, and it's very exciting. We're definitely at the beginning of something.
Tell me about 2008.
2008, the year that shall never be spoken of again. I'm joking. No, 2008 was really good because we had to cut away anything that wasn't at the core of who we were. And we had to re-examine what our priorities were and what it is that we wanted to do. We nearly went out of business. We were probably down to our last, $15,000.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a tough moment.
And how many staff did you have at the time?
Gosh, that's a good point. I should know this. I'm going to say about 4 or 5.
Yeah.
It was just a couple payrolls away. Let's put it that way.
You're not a real entrepreneur until you go through that, I think.
Yeah, right. But even at that moment, I never thought that we wouldn't do it. I was just so sure of whatever it was, whatever journey we were on. And that's unusual for me because I am the cautious optimist, because I'm the person who was told I couldn't do it, right? So therefore, I'm always cautious. But even then, I thought, no, something's going to happen. No, I'm going to make it. I feel it. Which was interesting. So I knew deep down that I just had a conviction, and I think so did Melkon, obviously.
But you had to refocus on what the core is and the meaning. And so what was that? How did you find that?
Yeah, so finding that it's the school of hard knocks. We knew, for example, when we were back in the days of making our celery peppercorn vodka and our pear lavender vodkas, we were trying to change how people were drinking spirits. We were telling them that it was acceptable to drink spirits with food. We weren't really doing cocktails, but shots like Melkon's family would do. That was a difficult behavior to change in people. Like, hey, try this. It's going to be great with your smoked salmon, and hey, this is going to be, great with your steak, and I just need a shot of this. It's really good. So, we made things that were unusual. Like we had a black truffle vodka that made from mushrooms, or flavored with mushrooms, I should say. It was really neat. All of the stuff was really delicious and neat. But what we thought was, it's a little too esoteric. No, we're just going to go back to things that people can use easily at the bar. So we really thought about cocktails, how we like to drink. And the thing about Melkon and me, we're a multicultural couple, interracial couple. On my side being Indian, me being Indian, and his side being Armenian. And our meals are so different here in LA especially, right? It's not like we're eating one type of food. Often the same meal will have 2 or 3 different elements of, borrowed, right? And including like something from, Korean takeout in the mix, right? So since our eating is changing so much, then so was our drinking. It's not like you could find a wine to easily go with these bold flavors, and they are often clashy together, but that's how we're eating these days. So that's what we love about cocktails, is that you can give it the character that you want. And therefore, it becomes a really fun and pleasant accompaniment to a meal. And so we often, approach it. All the stories behind the brands, like why we came up with a particular product, is always because we were eating.
What's your favorite?
How dare you? Favorite of the products?
I know. I hate when people ask me the same thing.
Not in front of the children. Truthfully, it really is about what we're eating.
Or what's the most unique? If something that kind of is maybe one of your more signature things that people know you by?
I think people are starting to know us more by Grand Poppy. It's a bittersweet liqueur known as an Amaro, which is an Italian style or European style liqueur. So it's sweet and bitter, like I was mentioning. But what's neat about Grand Poppy is that it's really about California. So it's California in a bottle. It was inspired by our walks in the local hills here, including Griffith Park, the California bay leaves that grow there, the pink peppercorns, which are actually a transplant like us, the various citruses that grow extremely well here, and of course our state flower, the California poppy.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's actually a nice, like grassy, bitter taste. So there you go.
So tell me a little about your background. So Melkon is Armenian, right? And you're of Indian descent. Actually, when I was in South India, I met many people with a Mathew last name.
Oh, yeah. It's an unusual last name, right? In South India, the state that my family comes from, Kerala, there is a Christian minority that's been around since 52 AD or so. And we're known as St. Thomas Christians because, according to the legend, it was St. Thomas himself who came to Kerala and converted us to Christianity. So anyway, that's the story. I was born in Africa, though, in Ethiopia.
Wow. And then what was the path to bring you to LA?
Right. Boy, everyone has an interesting path getting here, right? Well, actually, after Ethiopia, we lived in Jamaica, my family. I was 4.5 when I moved there, and then we left when I was 8. And it was actually because one of my siblings got sick, and at that time, the only types of treatments, this was in the late 70s, the only type of treatment that she could have was here in the U.S., so we came to California.
Wow, amazing. And what do your parents think now? The ones that said, you can't do it.
They're very, very happy. They get excited when they come to the distillery. They think it looks like a boutique hotel.
It is really beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
And what is it like to work with your husband?
It is actually delightful. We are extremely compatible and complementary in our skill set. So, and at this point, we've been together more than half our lives. So, yeah, we're probably codependent. But it's great. We really enjoy it. Even I just remember even in graduate school, we were really good at working on projects together. And I told my sister this, and then she pointed out that she and her husband went to graduate school together too, and they cannot work together. So, all right, okay, maybe that's not the best indicator, but it's worked out for us.
So how do you split things up, and do you think that it's different for the people who work for you, the fact that you're both married?
I wonder. I'm going to say that it's probably true that it must be weird to work for a couple. We really try to keep it a mellow environment in the distillery. And there's nothing crazy. We obviously have a strong point of view, like what we're trying to accomplish, but it's not personal in any way. And they will see us fight tooth and nail for ideas. And, you can see them like eyeing each other. Mommy, Daddy, no. But it's really only about may the best idea win. It's never personal.
How do you divvy up the responsibility?
Both of us can do each other's jobs in many ways. So that's really helpful. But I tend to work more on the day-to-day running of the distillery. And Melkon works on he has a CEO responsibilities of big strategy. But what's interesting is that often because we're entrepreneurs, we have to do so much that is not our expertise. So, for example, I do a lot of financial work at the company. And honestly, I am the least qualified person to do that. I'm much more of a marketing person. But it's important that you kind of pull up your socks and do the stuff that's not really fun also. Because if you don't have a good sense of the financial health of the company, at a visceral level, it gets difficult to make decisions. That's not to say you shouldn't have a specialized person to do it. And I'm just about to get a assistant controller because we're big enough to do that now, and give those responsibilities away because I need to concentrate on basically the connecting with people on the product. So, we do a lot of thankless stuff, cleaning bathrooms.
Still.
P&L, yeah, it happens from time to time because it's a pride of ownership, right? You just want to make sure everything looks right or it's ready for somebody. So,
how many people do you have working for you now?
We're at 15.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, I just realized something. You remember you asked me what made 2008 different, and I said, hey, we really had to figure out what was important to us and to our customers. Well, similarly, that moment came again in 2016. Not so much that we were in trouble, but we were just at a moment of growth. And that also meant making difficult choices. Like, what is it that you have to pursue and what is it that you focus on? And that was really what led to the packaging change. I know we knew we had to connect better with the people who love us, and they know they love one thing, they should love another, they should give something else a try that the distillery makes.
So you were actually a novelist as well?
So Melkon and I met in USC graduate journalism school. So for years I worked as a freelance writer, as a journalist, and I never knew I could, tell a story, like a novel. But I had this idea in my head, and I just kept thinking about identity and where our place is, like what is important to each of us, that we want to be seen for who we really are. That's really a difficult thing sometimes because you also want to be accepted by people. So it's always that fine balance, right, of like, wanting to be who you are and then wanting to fit in. So it was just that, started thinking about it, and I thought, I can't write a novel. This is really hard stuff. And you know what my breakthrough moment was? Wait a second. In a novel, you just make everything up. This is great. This is nothing like journalism. Terrific.
Well, fascinating. You don't write about being Indian or Ethiopian or Jamaican, but you write about Armenians.
Yeah. Okay. This is probably an aside, but you probably hear people always say the phrase, write what you know, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my main character is an 80-year-old Armenian musician. I am none of those things. But Write What You Know is about theme. It's really about the feeling of belonging. I can relate to that. Mm-hmm. So, I just use these characters to illustrate that idea of belonging or trying to belong somewhere.
Well, it's fascinating as an immigrant, right? My parents are immigrants as well. And
where's your family from?
Hungary.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they were refugees in 56. They're definitely Americans. And at the same time, there's sort of this, feet in both places sort of feeling, right?
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see that. And I think that LA is I wonder how you feel about being in LA specifically and your distillery being in LA, how that reflects that.
Oh, for definitely being in Los Angeles is a incredibly... It's a huge influence on what we do at the distillery, but also for us individually. What I love about the West and Los Angeles in particular is that nobody really cares where you're from. It's really about what you're going to do. And that gives you such an enormous amount of freedom that I don't think is available or that's easy back east even. And I hear that from Melkon, his side of the family. When they first came to the U.S., they ended up in Rhode Island. So he went to school in Connecticut. So it's like a very different, different experience. And he was telling me how important who your family is. They're back east. That's a big deal. And whereas we don't have that same, same sort of shackle in some way. So I'm sure it's also a support system back there. Those are all great. But here it's like, it's all about what you're going to do. And, you have a chance to prove yourself, which
Lots
is great.
of grand plans around here.
Yes. Yes, always.
What was the biggest surprise for you?
Okay, the biggest surprise in starting the distillery is I really thought I would be out of it by now. For some reason, I thought, I'll give it 3 years. I'll try it for 3 years, and then I'm going to go do something else. Maybe I'll write another novel, or write a novel, is what I said. Instead, we've been doing this for, it's going to be 13 years now, and I wrote the novel in between. Like, in between work, I would go home and do that stuff. And what people will tell us, or we see it from time to time, people will be like, wow, you guys came out of nowhere. And I want to pound my fist on a table and say, no, I've been here for a long time doing this.
It takes years to be an overnight success.
Yes, exactly. But it's all good since, I get to be with someone I love. And, so therefore it doesn't feel like, it feels like we're doing something meaningful every day because we're also together. And my favorite joke is at the end of the night, when we're just about to fall asleep, I like to turn to him and say, how was your day, dear? And we both have a laugh because we've been together all day.
So think back to your 16-year-old self. What would you think about where you are today?
That optimist? Yeah. Wow.
You were in LA?
I was just graduating high school. I was on the Indian plan, so I was a little ahead of the a little ahead of the game. I was about getting ready to graduate high school, so that meant starting college, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew it had to be something that would make my parents proud. And now look at me.
Oh gosh,
boy, that person didn't. Wow, I would never have guessed where I would end up.
And what would she think about you, what you're doing?
Should think I was a sinner, drinking all this alcohol, and because we grew up as teetotalers. So
that's funny.
Yeah, what? Not in a million years would I be doing something that I don't even,
and your
can't
parents,
even imagine.
Your parents don't mind though.
No.
Do they drink now?
No. Yeah, they'll have
Are they fans?
a nip. No, not with all their medications.
Oh. I have 3 questions that I like to ask everyone.
Okay.
So the first thing is, what does success look like? Where do you feel like you're going in the next few years? What's the big vision?
This is a good question because it is really hard to think of success when you are you're in the weeds, as they say. And I'll illustrate this by another friend in the arts district. There's a well-known fashion designer down the street. Her dresses you'll see it on powerful, sexy female characters on TV. They're always wearing this dress. It's very well known. And I remember having lunch with her maybe a year ago. And she's like, well, when I become successful, and I had to stop and say, you are successful. But when you're in the middle of it, it's very hard to recognize it. So, I don't know. I think from the outside, it looks like, wow, you're probably successful. But inside, it's just such a journey. And I actually don't have a marker for what that success is. And that's a really good question. So I'll go home and think about it.
Something to think about. In this whole process, in this journey, what's keeping you up at night right now?
Oh, anything will keep me up? No. It's usually answers to very creative questions or thinking about the customer. Again, the customer is also me. And you remember how I might have mentioned that we have this need to be accepted, but also this need to be an individual, right? It's that constant tension in our lives, right? Well, yeah, and we often, like writers will often say this. They'll say, my character would never do X or Y. No, my character would never do that. But that's not the right way to think of things, right? Mm-hmm. So the right way to think of it is that what are the circumstances that allow for your character to make this choice or to do this thing. So if you're saying, my character is never going to murder anyone, well, yeah, everyone's capable. It's just what is the circumstance that allows them to do that? So when I think of the distillery and our products and our customers, I often think that too. Like I think, what is the circumstance that allows someone to become a Greenbar customer? What is it that turns them to become that? And so then, that gives me a really good creative, morsel to chew on and really think of like how to do that.
I love that. That's so fascinating. Applying that thinking to marketing, fascinating. That's really, really cool. What's the one thing that you wish you had known to share with other entrepreneurs? In fact, like let's say if I were an entrepreneur, specifically, I want to start a distillery. What would you tell me?
Oh, don't do it unless you love it, because it is backbreaking work. It has so many regulations. It is also right now. It's like I said, there are 1,000 distilleries in there. So what is it? You got to have a strong point of view to kind of stand out from all of that. What is it that you have to say, and then how are you going to find your tribe? How are you going to find those people that love what you're doing? My advice is don't do it unless you absolutely want to and love it, because it's very expensive to get into it, the business also. Whereas other things, you can say, oh, hey, you know what? Give it a chance. But this takes money. And I think now to start the distillery, I think you need about $2 million.
Wow.
Yeah. Whereas when we started with our savings, which was $50,000.
You said that you just started with the little mason jars, etc.
Yeah.
Is that the first step? Can you start there, or at this point you can't even start there?
Yeah, you know what? You can always do that. It's fun at home to do that. What holds you back from actually real distilling are the laws, in that you can make beer at home, you can make wine at home, you cannot distill at home because it causes explosions.
I always thought it was because of the old prohibition stuff, but that would be a good reason not to. That would be a good reason. Yeah.
So if you're not doing it correctly, it blows up. So, it's not a very safe thing to do in an unregulated environment.
Anything else I should have asked you about?
Other than the hearts, how we came about the heart?
Well, I assume, but tell me more. Yeah, just about you're launching this new.
Oh my gosh, it was such a painful process in terms of the repackaging. We actually hired agencies, and you know what? They cannot tell you stuff that is deep in your soul, right? They can't do that for you. The good thing for us is that we do have artistic talent within the company. So, for example, Melkon can design these things. He's done a lot of the work. Along the way. And there was one agency that gave us great advice. They're friends of ours from the old days. And the principal, he said, hey, listen, you got to go back to Greenbar. And we were like, no, we don't. Hey, we just need we need to do the brands, and then we'll just figure out a logo that works. And of course, he's he's very client oriented. So he's like, okay, but he was right. We really had to take a step back and really examine what Greenbar was about. And that's when the hearts came in, that love for each other, the love of place, the love of food, and wanting to share all that. So that's really, we had to pare everything back and come to that.
That's so exciting. Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
I think the 3 most interesting lessons I learned today were, first, being a craft distiller enables you to make what you love. But as an entrepreneur, you need a balance between having a unique point of view and making what the customer will buy. After the recession, Greenbar couldn't afford to focus on products that were too esoteric, and so they considered their core customers, the bars who were looking for organic spirits to mix into cocktails. This tension between being novel while fitting in is really at the core of innovation, and I love how it reflects what it's like to be an immigrant, too. Also, I'm fascinated by Litty's perspective as a novelist. Just like how she gets characters in a novel to do surprising things, she asks herself, what circumstances will get our customers to buy this product? It's an interesting way to think about marketing, and it's driven them to redesign and launch new branding so they can cross-promote their product across all of their customers. Finally, I loved hearing about their distillation process and the challenges of using natural ingredients. I was surprised to hear that their focus on being organic was a happy accident. I assume they did it for marketing purposes, but they discovered that produce is just much tastier when the plants have to fend for themselves. That was a surprise to me. If you want to learn more and to taste their product, you can go visit the Greenbar facility for tours and classes. Visit their website at greenbar.biz. Time to wrap it up for The Art of Manufacturing. Tune in next week. I have 2 great guests in mind, and to be honest, I can't decide yet. So you'll just have to wait until next Thursday to find out who it is. Visit makeitinla.org for show notes and to stay in the loop about events, news, and resources. To chat with other like-minded manufacturing entrepreneurs, join our Facebook discussion group at makeitinla.org/community. Never miss an episode. Subscribe on iTunes, Google Play Music, or your favorite player. And if you like the show, do us a big favor and leave us a review. Or send us a message with feedback and ideas on Twitter at WeMakeItInLA. This podcast is produced by At Large and Dangerous in collaboration with the Make It in LA initiative and other partners. A big shout out to Peter Brandenburg, the producer and audio engineer, and our content coordinator, Heidi Carrion. This episode was recorded at The Reef in downtown Los Angeles. Thanks for listening to The Art of Manufacturing. I'm Z Holly, and remember, don't just make it, make it.